Your department, and as a superb negotiator that you are, how do you deal with individuals who are deceptive?
Well, I think deceptive is probably a strong word. I don't think,
Maybe it's not strong enough.
you know, I think there's always people that have other plans in place, right? That's kind, a little surreptitious by nature. I've had to work on working with people who are deceptive because I'm hoping, as you know me well enough now, David, is I'm a fairly straight shooter. I like to be transparent. What I've learned with people who are deceptive is not to judge them and want to write them off. And that's been a growth in my leadership. I had no time and no patience for people who had hidden agendas. I was what I will call naive, a kid from a cornfield in Iowa. I will say that many people in leadership positions are always looking for how to serve their needs. When I bring somebody in to do something for me and to promote my organization, my department, meet my students' needs, they're coming willing to help, but they also have their own needs and their own pieces. And a good old coach told me this once when I was networking with people, is don't always just ask how they can help me. My job as a networker is say, how can I help you, right? If I start with that, how can I help you, then I'm able to easily move past the deceptive piece. Because people are only deceptive if they don't think that I'm willing to help them and move their agenda forward. Now, sometimes I do that and people are still deceptive.
What do you do in that case?
In my case, and I'm not saying this is the right, but my style of leadership is always to call it. It's always to call it. Never in front of everybody, but it's to have the one-on-one conversation offline. I need you to help me understand here. Here's what I'm hearing. Tell me what's going on.
How's that work for you?
In my world, in some relationships, it has to be blunt. It's broken some up, right? In some, it's moved it forward. Nope, it's clarification. Well, I didn't think you want to do this. That's why. No, tell me, or I can't do this. Sometimes, and this is the truth, it moves it quicker, closer. Sometimes it stops the relationship. Sometimes it erodes the relationship beyond repair. But for most times than not, it's moved us forward quicker.
Do you keep a journal on these kinds of conversations?
I wish I did. Probably should, shouldn't I? Is that a learning moment?
Well, it might be able to give you additional insights as you go down the road.
Yeah.
I mean, I like the idea of sitting down and having the discussion with the individual, saying, am I missing something here? Did I not get this right? Why is this happening? How can I be helpful to? I think that's very important.
Yeah.
But I also think the recording of it, from a memory point of view, and it adds authenticity and credibility to the one that's asking the questions. Another series of questions which I think are quite important for the purposes of negotiations and advocacy. Advocacy is a big part of negotiations. Where do you stand on trust?
Trust is, for me, the foundation of any relationship. There's nothing more important than trust, above skill set, above talent, above work ethic. You know, I make changes to my team if I don't believe that there's trust there at the foundations of it.
Explain that.
Well, at the end of the day, and I'll say it as politically correct as I can, if somebody's out to get you, you're going to have a short career as a CEO or the leader of any organization. You have to believe that they're always out there supporting you, making you look good. And not just in front of everybody, but behind closed doors. And that's the key piece. It's one thing to say good things out in front. It's another thing to say it behind closed doors when somebody else is saying, yeah. And trust isn't about staying quiet. That's not trust for me, all right? Trust for me is saying, nah, I disagree. Or I'm gonna stop you there because nothing good is gonna happen. For me, trust is always one of my key leading characteristics in valuing employees and wanting to promote them in my organization.
So how do you generate and create trust in your organization? What do you do? We know what James and Susan and Bobby are going to do, but what do you do to engender that kind of trust that is important for you as a leader, but important for the organization?
I think there's several things, and this is a tricky answer, so I'll try and get there as quickly as I can. First piece is for everybody to understand my mission, vision, and my transcendent purpose, the things that are key to me, the non-negotiable values, and to make sure that the organization and the department that I'm leading lives to that. And then I start to reinforce those things that are really important to me. Now that's a theoretical framework answer, so let me boil it down to a real practical piece. When I talk about, I show a video, here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, right? It's an Apple 1985 commercial. And the last line is, because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. I want people to understand that their job is to add value to the community, is to take risk and to do things. My job then, and so I paint that picture, then my job is to then create opportunities for students to feel comfortable, or sorry, for staff and faculty to feel comfortable to take risks, to feel comfortable that it's okay to fail and not, oh my God, this guy did this, holy, he hasn't won games, he hasn't done this. When I do that, and I'm making decisions based on risk-taking, based on entrepreneurialism, based on enriching the student experience, and no negative harm falls a staff member, they start to believe what I'm saying. When a coach, I had a coach made a huge mistake, and I suspended his team, and I suspended his program. And when that happened, we met with HR, it was a long piece, right? I think that coach once expected something to happen. He expected firing to happen. But it was a learning experience. That was me developing trust in that person. But before you get to those critical pieces where they see trust happening, I've been really intentional in having people in my home, in having people for lunches, in nurturing relationships with people, in asking about their family, in inviting their families into my home. If you put people first and get to know them, they're also willing to put you first.
Let's come back to your statement of mission and values. Is your value system and mission for the athletic department somewhat different from the overall university's mission and values?
I wouldn't say it's different. I say it's articulated a little bit differently, but the mission, the vision, and the values are all in alignment.
They are?
I would believe so.
Okay, so if I'm going to be a contrarian.
Go ahead.
For a moment or two. That's pretty Pollyanna.
Yes. Let's boil it down to this, right? When you look at our priorities, you will find every single one of our priorities listed as the same as the university's. The university has 16 or 14 to 16 priorities. We have 6, right? When you look at our mission, right? Ryerson Athletics champions the spirit of belonging, pride, and excellence, right? Enriching the academic experience and developing the whole student. I took from those key words, academic experience, development of the whole student. Those words are reflected in either the priorities of the university or the mission of the university.
But Dr. Joseph, I've been watching all of the various varsity teams. They seem to each have their own set of values as it relates to their team. Is that not somewhat inconsistent? The university has values, the athletic department has values, and now individual varsity teams have their own set of values. Is there an alignment here, or is this just a bunch of Pollyanna, blah, blah, blah?
Well, I will say this. Each coach is allowed the autonomy and the freedom to lead their team the way they want. So let's just say I have a coach who is like, rah, 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 and he is, or she is just like a critical person. You're saying, well, that's not enriching the academic experience. Let's take it in this way and flip it this way. A coach does things that you allow as the athletic director for them to have the freedom to operate within their rules and within their norms, whether they're cultural or whatever they are. And I use cultural to be broad from their own perspective. Does that mean that I'm always going to agree with the decisions and the outcomes they make? Probably not. But my job as a director of athletics is only to get involved when it doesn't align with our values. So here's a perfect example. We had students that were playing on one of our teams, and I saw 2 students graduate and or leave our program after they expired their eligibility. So they never graduated. I'm like, wait a minute. How did we allow students to play for us for 5 years and not graduate? Well, a coach says, we're changing their lives. We're giving them the opportunity. Now they've gone and launched and gone on to play professionally. And that's a great thing. And my job as an athletic director is to say that doesn't align with our values as an athletic department in the university. And my job now is to come back to that coach and the athletic department and create policies to make sure that doesn't happen. And I did. If you have below a certain GPA, you're not going to allow to play. If you play in year 1 and you're not making satisfactory progress, you're not going to allow to play. So while some may interpret that as Pollyanna, my job is to recognize when those things are happening that are not in alignment.
But is it not a fact that varsity sports at Ryerson University, the coaches have their own set of values and their own mission statements, which are not in line, A, with the academic plan, or the overall values that the athletic department set out?
I will say this, I am not aware of them having their own missions and visions that are not in alignment with us. I will say that every coach will have different values that might not be in line with the departments, their own personal values, and might not be in line with the universities. But my job is to make sure that when I see the action happening on that, is to create policies and processes or management opportunities that will bring them back in alignment.
We talked about deception, we talked about trust, we talked about values. Another class of individual that you have to deal with is the difficult person.
Yes.
For whatever reason. There could be a family issue at home.
Yeah.
There could be a mean-spirited comment that someone has made. What does the athletic director do from an internal point of view with a person who is being difficult?
Well, I've grown
A little different from being deceptive.
I've grown the most here in this part, right? Because when I first was an athletic director, I tried to be a coach, right? And as a coach, you're just like, well, you're not doing what you're doing. Change it or get off the team, right? And as an athletic director, you recognize there's a process. And the process is long and arduous. And it always begins in an effort to seek to understand, right? And so with difficult people, my job is to have the conversation. What's going on here? What's happening? Sometimes people aren't even aware that they're being difficult. And it's to alert them to how their actions might be being perceived. Because and you might find out, oh, I didn't intend that to be. I had a difficult conversation the other day with one of my coaches, right? And I wouldn't say it was difficult, but he or she is a difficult personality. And I said, like, people are afraid of you. They're intimidated by you. They don't think you like them, right? They're not happy that you're back.
And what was the reaction?
What? Huh? What? Yeah. It surprised the heck out of him, right? So, and then he came back, he's like, you know what? I don't think people understand me. Yeah, I'm not a smiley guy or girl. Yeah, you know what? When I don't say hello to people, it's because I never wear my glasses, so I don't know they're saying hi or smiling at me, right? All these things, like, whoa. All I can say it was night and day difference when I had that conversation based on their interaction and the feedback I heard from other coaches. And that's a perfect example of like, huh, what? So, but that's a nice example. Sometimes you have those conversations and it still doesn't happen. And your job is to go and continue to have the conversations and then to document the conversations and then to create expectations and then to document the failure or the adherence of those expectations all the way to the point to either A, coach them to move them to where you want to be, or coach them to recognize that they're not a fit for your organization. I believe there's a famous saying I use, I don't know where it came from, but I claim it as my own. You can't push a rope, all right? And that's the process of dealing with difficult people if they're not willing to really reflect upon themselves.
Very good, very good. That's very insightful.
Work for you.
Question of threes. Here are the three questions.
Holy, come on, that's store them good.
Share with us 3 mistakes that you have made over the years that you've learned the most from.
Okay. I've got a couple that come to mind. So I once hired a second in command. And I hired a second in command that wanted to be the first in command right away. And I recognized that my style of leadership wasn't probably one that needed a second in command. And it was my own learning. My style of leadership was I needed somebody that was an operational person in an organization, not a person that needed and was ready and looking. So I created a conflict. I hired a second in command, and like any second in command, they're ambitious, they want to drive their own agenda, they want to be in this space. But I was always meddling in this area. What I needed was somebody that was happy to be an operational person, not somebody that wanted to be then the next job. So I created a conflict. I created 2 captains of a ship. And that was a good piece for me to learn about my own self and what I needed in an organization, because I like to touch pieces, right? The second learning, that I like to be close to the action. And it's okay to be close to the action. that you can't underestimate the value of that in a leadership. And I used to think that it was not the right way. And because this was my next step, and my next step was this, and then my next step was this. And I've only recently learned this in an exercise to try and figure out and build my resume and get to be on the right board and all of this sort of things. And it was a painful task for me. And I was like, why is this such a painful task? It's because I don't want that. I like where I'm at, which is interacting with the students and the action. And there's nothing wrong or poor about yourself as an individual for recognizing where you belong in an organization and where you add value at this time in my life. I think the last big thing, and this was a conversation I learned, and this is for a lot of young people who might have I call failings. My other university, a lot of the people in the leadership people were what I call very similar in their personality types. Papers were always organized. Things were very detailed. I remember coming here and seeing different types of leadership. You didn't have to be a certain way, a certain manner. I forget where my keys are. I couldn't, sometimes I lose my wallet. I remember looking with Sheldon one time for his car in the parking lot. We spent 10 or 15 minutes looking for his car. Sheldon was our former president. And he's like, oh my gosh, he just remembered. I didn't drive today. I felt so good about myself because that's something I would do. And to see a president have such success, yet be absent-minded, gave me the faith in myself that I could be excellent at my job, that I didn't have to, have everything, my sock drawer, my underwear drawer, my hangers in the same way, have everything just meticulous in order to be an impactful leader. I just needed to surround myself with the right people. What that did for me was to let go of the shame and guilt of not being great at everything and to be excellent in the one thing that I was good at.
One question that we haven't talked about, we've danced around it.
Mm-hmm. How did I get so good looking?
Well, that was the last question.
Oh, sorry. All right, go ahead.
But where are you on the scale with the media? Mm-hmm. What's the approach that Dr. Ivan Joseph, Director of Athletics, takes to the media? It's great when you're winning. That's pretty easy. Mm-hmm. But when the bombs start being thrown about team has been caught drinking and violating different rules and things of that nature, how do you handle the media? What would you recommend in handling the media?
I think we've been blessed here by exceptional marketing and communications people at the university, and to be honest with you, outstanding students who test me every day. I will say that my approach with the media has been open and accessible. I take two different approaches. One is with students that are in this, as students, they're learning. And it's always to be open and accessible to them, to take every interview that comes and to use it as a way to hone my skills. But really for them, it's their laboratory. When I've had, the second approach is when I'm dealing with what we'll call the professional media, the paid media, it's always to be out in front of the story. When I've suspended 2 teams since I've been here, and we've always been out in front of it and alerted either our own newspaper or the external newspaper, this is the story, here's what's happening, and here's why. Always, of course, sticking to key messages. Different than my peer university that just suspended some players up north, or I guess in Canada, we'll say, who are still waiting to hear what the clarity of the story and why, and allows other people to tell your story. Never let other people tell your story, right? Be out in front of it, own it. You may not like it, but you got to own it.
How do you square that with the issue of privacy?
Well, I think there's a piece where you decide how much you can share, right? And you have to, going back to key messages, we're suspending our players. They did actions that were not in conduct with our student athlete code of conduct, right? The suspension will last this long. We welcome to having them aboard. Well, what is it that they did? They broke our student code of conduct.
What happens in the situation when you're ripped in the media?
First off, you have to learn to let go of your ego and your personal pride and not take it personally. My job is not to react, I cannot emit emotion when dealing with those things. And that's taken a while because everybody's personality comes, and I've got one of the, my dukes come up right quick, right? And it's like, you know what? Deep breath in and fog. You learn the techniques. I can't believe that you did that. You're the worst athletic director ever. I'm sure there's a lot of people think that I could have done a better job on that, right? It's to find the positives in that criticism and just go with it. Because no good is going to come. You're just going to escalate the conflict in those sorts of situations.
So you've never been really ripped, have you?
I've been ripped, right? Yes.
Give us an example.
Oh my God. Well, here's the perfect one. This guy came from a school of 1,000 people. Who the hell does he think he is? He's never done anything. He's now just suspended an entire hockey team. He doesn't even know how to skate. He's a guy from a country where black people don't even skate. What business does he have of suspending this hockey team? That's pretty personal, right?
And how did you react?
There was no reaction in that one, right? But that when you get to that piece, you're not really dealing with a lot of rational people there.
We've talked a lot about different principles in terms of negotiations, advocacy, relationship building, what have you. But do you have a set of protocols that you call upon from time to time in any type of negotiations that you might be embarking upon, whether it's a sponsorship, whether it's an internal situation with the provo? Do you have a certain protocol that you follow that you could share with us?
Well, I don't know if I have a certain protocol, but I always begin it with one perspective in mind, right? How do I find out what they need? How do I make sure I bring out what they need first before I offer what I want, right? I always warm a group, right? I'm a big believer in small talk and engaging and connecting first. And then how do I find out what they need? How does it that I figure out what he or she wants before I talk about my needs, right? If I find out there and then speak to it, then then I add my part. And that took me a while to get to that, but that's really my fundamental piece, right? Engage them and connect with them. Find something that will help you join, right? Joining means what's similar, that interest, what key things, what small piece can we connect with that will allow us to join. Then, what do you need?
Who would you classify as a mentor as it relates to negotiations?
Well, there was an old guy, he's passed on now, but it was my first dean, which was Tom Powell, right? He was the dean of students. And he was a masterful negotiator. And you wouldn't classify him as such in title, but he did a thing which was known as, he was a church guy, he did a thing called Ministry of Presence, which he believed that being present in the lives of students allowed him to negotiate, meaning allowed him to be persuasive, allowed him to move him in the direction that they needed because they knew he cared, right? And I've always taken that approach, to be present in the lives of people who you need things from.
So that's why you succumb to the being close to the action.
100%.
Very good, very good. Final question before we conclude this great interview, and I thank you most sincerely for it. If you were advising young graduates from Ryerson University, what would you share with them about their first job, their next job, their careers, their vocations? What information would you convey to them about the roadmap ahead?
I would say that the one thing that I've seen with recent graduates, and I'm not sure if it's a millennial thing or just the people I'm interacting with, is that sometimes they're not ready and willing to take any job, the entry-level job. They want the third or fourth or fifth or end of the job now. And they get so caught up in that, and they don't. I remember trying to get a person who they wanted to be a head coach. I'm like, you had no experience. Doesn't matter. Like, well, I'm ready. I'm capable. It's like, you pick up pylons. You do whatever the job is that gets your foot in the door. There used to be more of a thing where you start in the mailroom, right? Whatever it is, and if you're good, they will find you. Talent has a way of rising to the top. Don't be so eager to have the end job now. Find the right company that has the purpose and the values and is in alignment with your own, and look past no job to get your foot in the door. And recognize that the journey then is that first step, and outwork everybody, right? If there's one thing I do, is I don't let anybody outwork me, right? And that's my purpose. Doesn't mean I'm the smartest guy, but I always want to be the hardest working.
Pretty sound advice. On behalf of the Ted Rogers School of Management, the faculty and students at the Ted Rogers School of Management, I want to express to you our sincere appreciation for joining us on the show today and giving us your insights about advocacy, about negotiations. It's been quite remarkable, and I can now fully understand as to why students and your colleagues refer to you as an inspirational leader. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me, David. Appreciate it.